Okay, so now that we've coded up the front page, the very main page, I think it's a good time for us to review what the navigation structure is going to be like. Well, navigation structure is actually going to be pretty simple. When the user first comes to the front page, they'll have an option to click on this menu button, or they could click on this menu tile and they will end up at exactly the same place. And where they will end up is the menu categories page. So this is the menu categories page, and all this page will do is list categories for us that are part of this menu with a picture associated with it and the name of the category. Now, one of the categories is called specials. Well, that should remind you of something. On the very front page, we have a tile called specials. Well, all that is just a direct link to a particular menu category called specials. So, point is, when they click on the menu, they will end up in this view, which is going to list all the menu categories with their pictures and the names of the category. The same thing will happen if they click on the menu button right here. They will also end up with this menu categories page. Okay, so let's go back to the code editor and we'll start coding up this page. Okay, so here I am in Sublime Text in examples folder lecture 37 in the after folder. And even though the structure of the page or the pages and the end product is going to be a little bit different once we introduce some JavaScript and start writing dynamic HTML, at this point it's much easier, since it's a design stage, it's much easier for us to simply copy index.html and call it something like menu categories.html. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll just call duplicate. And the reason we're calling duplicate is because a lot of the things that are inside index.html are going to be exactly the same. So the header and the footer and the menu items, they're all going to be exactly the same. It's the main content that's going to change. So we'll call this menu categories.html. Okay, so there's our menu categories.html. We could close index.html. We don't need it for now. So now what we need to do is we need to wipe out of the menu categories.html anything that has nothing to do with that page. Well, all the menus, the collapsible things, they all have to do with it. And the only thing that doesn't have to do with it is anything that's inside this main content container. So we'll go ahead and select this and we'll go all the way down and we'll say here, this is where it says end of main content, very convenient. So we'll press shift and we'll select all of that content and we'll go ahead and wipe that. Okay, so now we're ready to start writing our menu categories.html. And if we look at this page in the browser, well, this one is index.html, but now if we click on the menu tile, we'll actually end up at menu categories.html. As you can see, we only have the header, the footer. There is no content in the page. So let's go ahead and start filling it out. So the first thing we need to do is we need to kind of let the users know what page this is, right? So we're going to go ahead and paste this H2. It's not going to be H1 since H1 is David Chu's China Bistro, but H2, the secondary heading, is going to be menu categories. That's the name of this page that we're at. And we're going to give it an ID, menu categories title. That's going to be its ID, and the class is going to be text center, which is a bootstrap class just to center the text in the middle. So if we save that and go to the browser, we should see a nice menu categories title here appearing in the middle. And the next thing really comes directly from the original menu, and that's just a reminder to the customers about substituting white rice with brown rice and etc. here. This is just, just real business stuff that has to do with this particular restaurant. And again, we're just going to put it in a div with a class text center just to center this in the page. Now we're probably going to style this a little bit. Let's take a look as to what it looks like in the page. Actually, it doesn't really look that bad. We might want to make it a little smaller. We'll see. Okay, so that's basically it for the heading of the page. And now we need to start coding our tiles. And of course, our tiles or the menu categories themselves are going to have to be in a grid. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So let's go ahead and put the entire thing in a section. So we're already inside a container right here, right? So it's a container class. That means we don't need to have another container, but we do want a grid. So we're going to go ahead and create a section with the class row. So we're going to put everything in one row. And if you take a look as to how we want to position this, we want 6 tiles across when it's a full browser, and obviously as we squeeze it, we want to fit as many as possible that will still look good, but at the same time, obviously some of them will need to be stacked. Okay, so I know each grid in the cell is going to be a div. We're going to surround that in a div. And I have some code prepared for inside of each grid cell. And I'll go ahead and copy and paste that right here. Let's remove that space right here. So let's go over it real quick. So we haven't really assigned any columns yet to this grid, but this is going to be the contents of pretty much every single grid. So number one is we're going to have ahref to single category.html. So single category.html is really just going to be a generic page that we haven't even written yet, but it's going to point to that particular category that's going to be identified by this div and by this picture. So each category is going to have an anchor tag pointing to single category.html, which in this case is just a placeholder page, and in the future will be actually a designated either a page, or we'll see how that works with JavaScript, will be basically a designated place that will show you this particular category. And inside of it, we're going to have a div, and the div is going to have this class called category tile, obviously a custom class that we created, and inside of it, we're going to have an image of 200 by 200, and this is something that we've sized before. And the image source is going to be in images, and actually that's probably the wrong path. So let's take a look at images. There's going to be menu, and at this point let's just pick something like b.jpg. So it is images, then menu, then /b/b.jpg, and let's save that for now. And we'll call this particular category lunch, even though I don't think that's what it is. But at this point, it doesn't really make any difference. We're just styling each of these categories that they should fit on a page, and then we'll fill in the actual data later. Okay, so far so good. Let's go ahead and preview it in the browser. And obviously, we could see the picture, and lunch is somewhere to the right, and things are obviously not styled 100%. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this whole div, which is going to be our grid cell, and let's paste it a few times. Let's paste it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's say that's good enough. Okay, so now we actually have a grid, and they're all going to be really the same. The only thing that's going to be different about them is where they're going to be pointing in terms of the URL in the ahref tag, and where the image source is going to be pointed. But other than that, they're going to be all the same. So let's go ahead and start styling our grid. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to have 6 of these things basically in one row, and then whatever doesn't fit should go ahead and spill over to the next row, not technically a next bootstrap row, but just the next row visually. Okay, so how do we accomplish a 6-cell layout? Well, that means that each cell is going to have to cover 2 columns. So let's go ahead and do that. And we probably want the 6 category layout even at the medium size screen. So we'll do column MD and 2. So if that's going to be the case, that means this is going to take 2. Let's go ahead and copy that, and we'll just insert it into every div. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Let's take a look in the browser as to what we have. Ooh, so we see right away here that this is really going to work, because you could see that the pictures are kind of stepping one upon the other, and this is at the full size. This is even at the large size. So definitely as we squeeze this is not going to work very well. They're kind of stepping up on each other. So what that means is that the 6 picture layout is really not going to work. So we have to kind of rethink that. So if the 6 picture is not going to work, how about we try 4 pictures across? We could try that very easily by just selecting this 2. Let's go ahead and select it every single place, all across our classes, selecting this 2 and changing it to 3. Okay, so that's that. So go ahead and press 3. So every single place it changed to 3. So now what we're going to have is 4 pictures across the screen. So let's go ahead and go back to the browser. Well, even though it looks all messed up at the moment, it does look actually kind of okay in terms of the pictures fitting in the screen. So things are kind of messed up here, but we'll take care of that in a minute. Okay, so that sounds about right. And let's go ahead and start styling some of the things inside the actual cell using our styles.css. Let's go ahead and style CSS. And let's scroll down to somewhere maybe under the home page. Here's the footer. Here's the home page, and we'll scroll down right around here. So let's remove that space over here. And let me cut and paste some of the code that I made before the lecture, and we'll go over it right now. Okay, so first of all, the category tile. Let's go ahead and take a look at our HTML here. The category tile is that inner tile inside the A tag. So the category tile is all that. And we kind of have the very same type of structure that we had in the menu tile and the special tile, is that we have some text, so in this case it's actually just an image, and we have a span, and we're going to target that span and position it absolutely within the div element itself. So the div element will be like a relative anchor for the span that's inside of it, and we're going to put it on the bottom. So let's go ahead and take a look how we're doing that. So first of all, the tile itself is going to be relative, like I told you, is going to be the anchor. And the border, we're going to have a nice border around it. The overflow will be hidden, so if anything is sticking out in terms of the picture or whatnot, it should not be actually sticking out and protruding. It should just be clipped. And since we know that the picture or the image is going to be 200 by 200, we're going to go ahead and style the width and the height to be 200 and 200 pixels. And we're also going to have some margins. The top will be 0. The right will be auto. The bottom will be 15 pixels, and the auto is going to actually carry over to the left as well. But so this is that same trick we spoke about before as to how to center something. As long as you give it a width and you give it auto on both sides, margin right and margin left, it will automatically center itself. Okay, so that's the actual container div that's going to have that picture. Now, what about the span? That's kind of the title of the actual category. Well, the span is going to be positioned absolutely, and it's going to be, again, bottom 0, right 0. The width is going to be 100%, so we'll stretch the entire width of that picture. We'll center it. We'll give it a 1.m size text, and we'll transform it again to uppercase. The background color will get to be black, and the foreground color will be white. And again, we'll tune down its opacity just a tad here, so it will be just a little bit transparent to give us that nice see-through effect. Okay, the next thing we'll do is the hovering part. We're going to give some box shadow, the same type of box shadow that we had on the front page when you rolled over this particular category. Remember, each one of these category items, these pictures, are going to be clickable items. So that's why we need some sort of a visual indication that a person can, or the user can, click on that. And last thing we're going to do here is target the ID menu categories title plus div, which means the next sibling to this element. So let's go take a look what is menu categories title is. Well, it's all the way at the top here, and we have menu categories title. That's the one that says menu categories, and its next sibling, meaning the next element of the same parent. So this h2 has a parent of this div, and the next sibling of this h2 is this div right here. So we're saying I want to target the element with this ID, and I want to target its next sibling right after it, which happens to be right here, this substituting white rice stuff, right? So that one, we want to give it a margin of 50 pixels. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to give a nice separation between the title of the page and kind of its subtitle note to the customers and actual menu categories that are going to be underneath. So we're going to go ahead and save this, and we'll go back to the browser. We could see that at least the first row seems to be looking pretty well, and the second row is something's wrong with it. Well, let's go back to our code and let's take a look as to what we've done here. So they should all be at this point column MD3. Let's see if we maybe messed up somewhere. Column MD3, and sure enough, we messed up. We got to do column MD3 here, and I think that's about it, right? I think they're all column MD3 from there on. Okay, so let's go back to the browser now that we saved it, and now they're nicely aligned. So, and if we squeeze them here, squeeze the browser, they'll get a little closer, and at some point they'll jump, since we haven't really specified anything below MD, medium screen size, they'll go ahead and start stacking. But obviously we don't want them to stack just yet around MD. We want to specify something for the small and the extra small. And that is what we're going to deal with in part 2 of this lecture.